If you're here, it's for a reason. Maybe today wasn't an easy day. Not because everything has gone wrong, but because you've been walking around with a quiet feeling for a while now, as if you were doing everything right, but something still hadn't quite opened up. You keep moving forward, you keep believing, but at times, a silent question arises within you. Am I really being seen? You don't say it out loud. You don't post it. But that question lives deep inside. And yet, something brought you here. It was no coincidence. Many drive right past. Many don't even stop. But you did. And that small decision reveals something important. Because this message didn't arrive by accident. There are moments when a word appears just when the Spirit is ready to understand it. And today we're going to talk about a word that almost no one notices, but that holds a deep secret within one of the most well-known sentences in the world. A small word, but full of meaning. A word that the ancients wrote with Code of Epiousios. And when you understand what it really means, everything changes in the way you perceive God's provision. Before we continue, stop everything for a moment. Don't speak. Don't write. Just think this phrase in your mind. God knows exactly what I need today. Don't repeat it quickly. Let it descend slowly. Breathe. Allow your mind to calm down. Because often the noise of the world makes us forget something simple. God's provision rarely comes with noise, but it always arrives with precision. When Jesus taught how to pray, he included a phrase that millions of people repeat. Give us this day our daily bread. But there is one word in that sentence that has aroused questions among scholars for centuries. The word Epiousios. It was not a common word in ancient Greek. In fact, it hardly appears in other texts. That led many to wonder. What did he really mean? Some translated it as daily bread, but others discovered something deeper. The word can also be understood as what is necessary to exist fully, not food, not just something material, but the exact provision that sustains your life at the right time. It's a supply that doesn't always arrive sooner or later. It arrives when it makes sense within the purpose. And this is where many people get confused. Because we live in a world that measures everything by speed, fast. Results, immediate responses. But spiritual language works differently. Heaven does not operate with anxiety. It operates with precision. Perhaps there were moments when you felt like you were walking in silence, praying, expecting, learning, patience that no one sees. And at those moments, the human mind can interpret silence as abandonment. But in many spiritual stories, something curious happens. The period where it seems that nothing is happening is exactly the period where something is forming. Not outside, inside, patience, wisdom. That ability to sustain what is to come. Because receiving is easy. Holding on is another story. And often the process prepares the character before. Opening new doors, not as punishment, but as invisible training. Think about this for a moment. If someone receives something too big without preparation, they may lose it. But when someone has gone through silent processes, when he has learned to walk even without applause, when you have developed inner peace, then he's ready to manage something bigger. Not just resources, but responsibility, purpose, positive influence. That is why divine provision often manifests itself in layers. First, clarity, then strength, then direction. And finally, resources that support the purpose. Now, everything arrives at the same time, but everything arrives in order. That order is what many don't see, but those who have walked it recognize it. That now imagine something. You are walking along a peaceful path. At dawn, the sky is still deep blue, but the sun is beginning to rise. The light appears slowly, not all at once. First, a golden line on the horizon, then a soft glow, and finally, the whole landscape lights up. This is how spiritual provision often works. It doesn't arrive like a chaotic lightning bolt. It arise like a sunrise. First a sign. Then an opportunity, then clarity, and when you look back, you realize that the process was always guided. Although it didn't seem that way at the time, the message we are beginning to uncover has a depth that many overlook, that not because it's hidden, but because the noise of the world makes it difficult to perceive what is essential. The word Epiousios appears in a sentence known by millions, but the curious thing is that its full meaning cannot be reduced to something simple. For centuries, translators and scholars reflected on it. Some understood that he was talking about daily sustenance, oteris observed, something even deeper, an idea that could be described as follows: the exact provision that sustains a person's purpose at the right time. No more, no less, exactly what's needed to take another step forward. And when you understand this, something inside you calms down, because you begin to perceive life from a different perspective. Think about your own story. There were moments when it seemed that there wasn't enough clarity, moments where you could only move forward with what you had at that moment, not in the way you imagined, not with what others had, just with what was in front of you. And without realizing it, that small step led you to the next one, and then to another. This is how many stories are constructed, step by step, not from absolute control, but from trust. People who learn to recognize God's provision develop something special, a different perspective. They don't focus solely on what's missing. They begin to see what is already present, an opportunity, an unexpected conversation, an idea that appears silently, a door that opens naturally, small signs that, when viewed carefully, reveal direction. But those who live in constant anxiety rarely perceive them, because their attention is caught up in what has not yet arrived. And here's an important truth. Spiritual provision rarely enters a mind saturated with worry. It comes more clearly to a heart that learns to remain at peace. Perhaps you're wondering something very human. How is that provision recognized in daily life? It doesn't always appear as an extraordinary event. It often appears in simple forms. Clear thought amidst the confusion, a decision that suddenly becomes obvious, a conversation that changes a perspective, an opportunity that comes when you had already decided to move forward with faith. Divine provision is not always noisy, but when it appears, it has a special quality. It brings peace, even when it involves bravery, even when it invites us to move towards something new. During the process of spiritual growth, there are seasons where the person feels that they are being prepared. Moments where patience is learned, where character is strengthened, where inner wisdom is developed. And although from the outside those periods may seem slow, from another perspective, they are full of training. Think about the big trees. Before they grow upwards, they grow downwards. The roots go deeper. They become strong. They expand silently underground. Nobody applauds that process. Nobody sees it. But that is exactly what will allow the tree to stand firm when the wind comes. Something similar happens in the spiritual life. Inner depth prepares for future stability. Stop the pace again. Take one deep breath. Now slowly think this sentence in your mind. I am being guided even when I don't see everything. You don't need to rush it. Let the idea settle within you. Because faith often doesn't consist of having all the answers. It consists of walking knowing that each step can be accompanied by direction. When we talk about the remnant, we are not referring to a superior elite. It refers to something much simpler. People who have learned to listen, people who, amidst the noise of the world, still seek moments of silence. People who do not abandon their inner path even when the process seems long. Those kinds of people start to notice something special. They perceive signals that others miss. They recognize direction where others see chance. And they slowly realize that their lives are not being guided by accident. If this message resonated with you in any way, there's something simple you can do now. Write this phrase in the comments. I received the provision that sustains my purpose, not as a formula, but as a conscious declaration. Every time someone writes a sentence like that, they are doing something powerful. He is aligning his mind with a truth that's his path. And it also creates a community of people who remember something important together. No one walks alone when they decide to move forward with faith. Imagine again that sunrise we talked about earlier. The light advances slowly. First, touch the mountains, then the trees, then the road, and finally it reaches you. You don't have to run towards the sun. The light moves on its own. Your role is to stay on the path, breathe, and continue moving forward. Something happens when a person begins to understand the principle we've been exploring. The anxiety begins to lose its strength, not because all the challenges disappear, but because the perspective changes. The heart begins to understand that life is not sustained solely by human effort. There's a provision that accompanies the purpose, a supply that arrives in ways that often cannot be predicted. And when someone learns to recognize that truth, a new kind of tranquility appears. It is not passivity. It is not resignation. It's active trust. Let's return for a moment to that very particular word, Epiousios. For centuries, translators pondered it because it did not easily fit into a single definition. It wasn't just describing food. It wasn't just describing something material. Nor was it limited to that every day. Many concluded that it pointed to something broader. Inadequate provision. For the present moment, the word contains a very special idea, that which sustains your life as you move toward the purpose entrusted to you. That means that divine provision is not a random distribution. It is related to the path you are taking. with a personal mission that unfolds step by step. That's why two people can be at different points in their history and receive different forms of provision. One may need direction, that another may need rest. Another may need courage to start something new. And each of those things is also a provision. We often imagine God's provision as something spectacular. But most of the time it happens in a much simpler way. A clear idea where before there was confusion. An unexpected peace in the midst of a difficult time. Conversation that changes perspective. An opportunity that arises when a person decides not to give up. When you look at your own story closely, you begin to notice something interesting. There are times when help arrived just when it was needed. Perhaps not in the way you imagined, but it arrived. That's the pattern many people recognize when they look back. The journey wasn't perfect, but it was never completely empty. There was always something that supported the next step. Close your eyes for a moment. If you can, imagine you are standing in front of a road that stretches towards the horizon. You can't see the whole journey, only this section that is in front of you. The light falls on that part of the road, not especially the landscape, just about what you need to see now. That is the principle that often governs the spiritual journey. Clarity arrives in the necessary measure to move forward, not always more, but no less. And when you take that step, the next section lights up. Perhaps today you are in a moment where you are waiting for clarity. Perhaps you are making important decisions. Or are you simply trying to move forward with faith? Remember something important. God's provision is not always measured by the quantity of His things. It is often measured by the peace it allows you to contain, because inner peace is also a form of provision. That's wisdom that appears at the right time is also wisdom. Even the patience that forms within you is a powerful tool for the future. When you look at life from this perspective, something changes. You stop seeing the process as an absence, and you start to see it as preparation. Take one more deep breath.